home inspector is a professional stranger who gets paid to open every door you'd never open in someone else's house. The attic hatch, the crawl space, the panel behind the water heater. Most houses are exactly what they look like, but every inspector who's done 1,000 walkthroughs carries 2 or 3 addresses they never talk about at dinner, because some houses have kept a secret longer than the people selling them. These 3 stories are about the day the tape measure found it. Home inspection is boring, and I say that with love. It's checklists and moisture meters, GFCI testers and roof shingles, 4 hours of professional pessimism per house, 1,100 houses over my career. This story is about number 600-something, a 1926 brick 4-square on Delmore Street, estate sale, being sold by a grandson who'd never lived in it, and it's about the 4 feet that weren't there. I measure houses, not because the checklist requires it, because 30 years ago, my mentor, a chain-smoking perfectionist named Arnold, taught him his one commandment: the outside of a house and the inside of a house are the same size, and when there aren't, the difference is information. You'd be amazed how rarely anyone checks. Appraisers eyeball, agents copy old listings, but I walk the exterior with a laser measure like Arnold taught me, and then I walk the rooms and I add. Delmore Street measured 38 feet 4 inches along its north side outside. Inside, the 2 rooms along that wall, a rear bedroom and a den, added up, with an interior wall's worth of allowance, to 34 feet. 4 feet, missing, 2nd floor only. You check yourself first, that's the discipline. Wall thickness, a chimney chase, a closet I hadn't counted, some duct run boxed in during the Carter administration. I remeasured twice. I went outside and counted windows, 5 across the 2nd floor north face. Inside, I could stand in front of 4 of them. The 5th window, center of the wall, curtains visible from the street, glass cleaned by somebody in some point in history, did not exist inside the house. The bedroom closet ended in a plaster wall that my knuckles said was hollow-backed and my laser said had 4 feet of house behind it. I want to pause on the moment because people always ask what it feels like. It feels wrong in the stomach first. Houses are honest machines. They don't have organs, their blueprints don't show. And a sealed room with a curtained, cleaned window, a window someone maintained the appearance of for what turned out to be 5 decades, is not an architectural quirk. It's a held breath. It's a house keeping a secret with its face perfectly straight, and I'd been inside that secret's wall thickness for 2 hours without knowing. My report has a section for this, dryly named Areas Inaccessible for Inspection. I wrote it up, called the listing agent, and said the sentence you say. There's a concealed space, roughly 4 by 11, 2nd floor north. No visible access. Recommend further evaluation. And the grandson, decent guy, a school teacher 2 states away, who mostly just wanted the estate settled, did the thing I'll always respect him for. He didn't send a contractor with a sledgehammer. He drove out. He asked me to come back, and on a Tuesday morning, with the agent and me as witnesses, he opened his grandmother's wall. The plaster came away from lath in sheets, and behind it there was a door, an ordinary interior door, painted over at its seams half a century ago, hung in a frame that someone had lathed and plastered across as carefully as a craftsman closes a coffin lid. The knob had been removed, and the putty was over the hole. The grandson turned to me before we opened it and said, "I remember exactly. Whatever's in here, my grandmother had a reason." and I've thought since that he was preparing himself for something terrible, the way we've all been trained to by stories like the ones on this channel. It was a nursery. 1950s wallpaper, sailboats, a crib made up, its blanket folded down as if for a nap, grey with 50 years of settled dust, but made, tucked, deliberate, a rocking chair by the window with the curtains I'd seen from the street, a shelf of picture books, a christening gown in a flat box, tissue gone amber, and on the wall in little wooden letters, THOMAS. The grandson stood in the doorway a long time, and then he said, "I had an Uncle Thomas. He died before my mother was born. Nobody ever talked about it. I thought," and he stopped, and none of us said anything else for a while, because the room was saying it. Thomas Reller, we confirmed later in county records, died in that house in 1954, 11 months old, rheumatic fever, and his mother, the grandmother, who lived in that house 60 more years, who raised 2 more children down that same hallway, who cleaned that window from a ladder every spring, the neighbors said, well into her 80s, had the room sealed, not emptied, not redecorated, sealed, intact, mid-breath, with the blanket turned down for a nap that was, as far as that room would ever know, about to happen. Every inspector has a version of this speech. I find rot, I find bad wiring, I find the lies sellers tell. That Tuesday, I found the truest thing I've ever seen inside a wall. A grief so exact it needed architecture. She couldn't look at the room, and she couldn't unmake it, so she did the only thing left. She made the house hold it for her. 50 years. The house held it the whole time, 4 feet of held breath behind a closet, while birthdays and Christmases went on 11 inches away. The grandson didn't demolish it. He had the door rehung with a working knob, and he took the crib blanket home to his mother, Thomas's sister, who was, he told me later, angry for one day and then wasn't, and who kept it. The house sold with a nursery on its listing sheet, 2nd floor north. The new owners have a little girl. Her name is not Thomas, but I'm told the sailboat wallpaper stayed. I still measure every house, Arnold's commandment. The difference is information. He never told me the information could break your heart. Foreclosure inspections are their own genre. Empty houses, banks for clients, lockboxes and dead utilities. In that particular silence, vacant houses grow like a smell. I'd done hundreds. The house on Crestline Avenue was supposed to be 4 hours of routine. 2 years vacant, bank owned, a pre-listing inspection so the lender could price it. Vacant houses are honest about their emptiness. Dust settles evenly, like snow. Spiders own the corners. Everyone tells you the same story. Nobody comes here. Crestline told me that story in every room except one. The small upstairs bedroom at the back, the one whose window looked across a low fence into the neighbouring property's rear yard and kitchen windows, had a chair in it. One chair in an otherwise empty house. A folding chair set square to the window, close to it, angled just so. And the dust, I'm a dust professional, it's half my science, the dust on that floor was wrong. A path ran from the door to the chair, polished into the boards by repetition, the way a path gets worn in carpet over years. The chair seat was clean. The windowsill was clean in 2 patches, forearm-sized, and on the glass, at seated head height, there was a faint oval of clarity in the grime, the ghost of breath and closeness, a porthole polished by a face. I stood in that little room reading the scene the way you'd read a campsite, and the house's story changed in one held second from nobody comes here to somebody comes here all the time. For one thing, To sit in the dark, the power had been off for 2 years, remember, and look out this window. I looked out the window. The neighbour's yard, a swing set, a sandbox, a kitchen window over a sink, curtains open, a child's drawings taped to the glass. While I stood there, a young mother crossed the kitchen with a toddler on her hip, visible as a lit stage set 50 feet away from a dark room she had no reason to believe is anything but empty. And every hair on my body stood up at once because I understood what I was standing in. Not a squat, not a kid's party spot. I know those scenes, the bottles and butts and burn marks. Nothing else in this house was touched. Whoever came here came for this room, this chair, this angle, this family, and had come enough times to wear a shine into the floor. I did the boring, correct things. I photographed everything, the chair, the path, the sill, the porthole in the grime, time-stamped, wide and close, because an inspector's photos are evidence grade out of habit. I checked the lockbox log with the bank. My entry that morning was the first legitimate access in 7 months. I found the real access point in about 10 minutes once I knew to look. A basement window with its latch snapped, hidden behind an overgrown juniper, well-oiled hinge marks in the paint, a milk crate positioned below it on the inside, somebody's private door, used often enough to need oiling. And then I did the thing that wasn't on any checklist. I knocked on the neighbour's door, because the bank was my client, but that woman with the toddler was. Look, there's no professional standard for this, there's just what you can live with. I told her who I was, showed her my license, and said there were signs of unauthorized entry next door, and that she should be aware. And I watched her face do the thing faces do when a fear they've been talking themselves out of gets a permission slip. She said, and this is the sentence I still hear, "I knew somebody was there. I felt it for a year. My husband kept saying the house is empty." The house is empty. The 2 most dangerous words in her life had been a reassurance. Police took it seriously. The photographs did the persuading. Scenes read differently when they're documented. And what happened next happened fast. A patrol unit started passing nightly. The bank secured the basement window with bars and put a camera in the room, at my written recommendation, disguised in a smoke detector, aimed not out the window, but at the chair. 11 days later, it captured a man entering at 11:40 p.m. with a thermos. A thermos. He had a routine. He had provisions, settling into that folding chair like a season ticket holder and sitting, in the dark, for 3 hours, face clean on camera when he checked the smoke detector's red light and decided it was nothing. He was the woman's co-worker, not a stranger, a man from his office who'd been just a friendly guy at exactly the right distance for 2 years, who'd found the perfect blind, a house that would never have visitors, a room that saw everything, a chair he must have carried in himself. The charges are what they are always in these stories, trespass, stalking, less than you'd want, but the protective order held. He lost the job, he left the state. The bank sold the house that spring to a retired couple who knows its whole history because the neighbor told her herself over the fence on move-in day. She said she wanted neighbors who'd believe her fast. I think about the physics of it. Every vacant house on every street is a dark theater seat, and we only ever audit the stage. Now, on every vacant inspection, I do a thing that isn't in any standard. I stand at each window and look out, and I ask, what does this house watch? Most houses watch nothing, traffic, a fence. But I found one more chair 3 years later, in another town, set square to another window, path worn in the dust. That neighbor got a knock too. That one made the news. Check the empty houses on your street, folks, not for what's in them, for what they can see.
Thermal cameras changed my trade. Point one at a wall, and the house confesses. Leaks bloom blue, bad insulation stripes the studs. An overloaded breaker glows like an ember. The camera doesn't see ghosts, it sees temperature. And temperature always has a cause: moisture, air, current, sun. 11 years I've carried one. One reading I cannot explain. I've stopped trying. Now I just tell it. The house was a 1962 ranch on Verna Court, being sold by out-of-state heirs. Nice bones, tired finishes, empty 8 months. I was doing my standard thermal sweep at the end. You do it last, with the HVAC cranked so anomalies show. And in the front room, in front of the big east window, the camera stopped me cold. On the floor, a warm patch, oval, maybe 5 feet by 3. Not warm like sun, it was 4 p.m., the east side long in shadow. Not plumbing, I pulled the slab plans, no lines ran there. Not electrical, not a duct, not a pet sleeping somewhere I couldn't see, because I checked the empty room with my own eyes, while the camera insisted, in calm false color, that something the size and shape of a seated man was radiating gentle heat from the floor beside the window. And I mean shaped, not a blob. There was a denser core and a fainter halo, and 2 distinct warm ovals ahead of the mass, side by side, right where feet would rest, slippered in front of a chair. The kind of pattern a person prints into a floor after sitting a long time. A very long time. Every tool has artifacts. That's the rational spine I climbed down. Thermal emissivity, subfloor voids, curing compounds. I have a list. I ran the list. I taped cardboard over the window. The patch stayed. Came back at 7 a.m. cold soak, before sun. Patch stayed. Same shape, 1 point something degrees over ambient. Patient as a signature. My moisture meter read nothing. My hand flat on the boards, and it took me a minute to put my hand there. I'll admit that on the record. Felt it. Faint. Like a chair someone just left. I wrote it up as an unexplained thermal anomaly. Slab, front room, recommend monitoring, which is inspector for I have no idea. And I asked the listing agent my usual casual question, the one about the house's history, and the agent got the voice. You learn the voice. And she told me the previous owner, Mr. Holverson, a widower, had passed away in the house the winter before. In the front room, in his chair by the east window, where he sat every day. The neighbors all knew him there. He waved at the school kids from that window for 30 years. He died sitting there in January, quietly, of an ordinary heart, and because he was private and his only son was overseas, he wasn't found for some weeks. The chair and the flooring beneath had been, the agent chose her words, part of the remediation. New subfloor, new boards. The patch I was reading was in flooring that had not existed when the man died. I'm going to leave that sentence alone and just keep going, because that's what I did that day. Here's where the story earns its place on this channel. The house sold. I disclosed the anomaly. Buyers shrugged. Young couple, first house, thermal readings are astrology to most people. 3 years later, the same couple hired me for a pre-renovation consult, and the wife, walking me through, stopped in the front room and said, completely unprompted, "Weird one for you. This corner's always warm, every winter. The dog won't sleep anywhere else." And there, beside the east window, on the floor I'd scanned, was a dog bed and a very old beagle in it, folded into an oval, 5 feet by 3, exactly on the spot. The camera, when I ran it, old habits, showed me the dog's blazing little furnace of a body, and around it, under it, that same faint, patient halo, 1-point-something degrees, holding the shape it had always held. The wife saw my face. I told her the whole story, Holverson, the window, the weeks, the new floor. And this young woman, who never met the man, did something with the information that I think about more than the anomaly itself. She didn't call a priest or a podcast. The next time I visited, furnace check last November, there was a chair by the east window, a proper wingback, angled at the street, with a lamp beside it on a timer, dusk to 10. Nobody sits in it much, she said, a little embarrassed. It's just the window needed one. The school kids wave at the house, you know, old habit, I guess, from before us. The kids wave at the house. The lamp comes on at dusk. The floor by the window stays 1.5 degrees warm, and the beagle keeps the spot, the way beagles keep the spots that matter. And my report, it's still in the file, any appraiser can pull it, says unexplained thermal anomaly, recommend monitoring. Still monitoring. 11 years on the tool, and I'll tell you what I tell the trainees when they ask if thermal cameras ever see anything strange. The camera sees temperature. Temperature always has a cause. I just don't get to know all the causes. And in one ranch house on Verna Court, the cause sat by a window for 30 years being kind to a street, and some warmths, it turns out, are load-bearing. They stay in the house. The house would be cold without them. If you've made it this far, remember that every house on your street is holding something, a sealed door, a worn path, a warm spot, and mostly you'll never know because nobody measures. Subscribe to the Hollow Dial because time doesn't heal, it haunts. And if you've ever opened a wall, a crawl space, or an attic and found a story, we want it. Leave it in the comments. We're listening. And so is something else.